Have you ever wondered what it means when someone has no close friends? Or maybe even realized that you are in that position? For many people, this feels like a sign of failure, loneliness, or rejection. But what if having no friends reveals something much deeper about your personality, your growth, and your psychological journey? According to Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, the experience of friendship, or the lack of it, is not just about social life. It's about your relationship with yourself, your shadow, and your path of individuation. So in this video, I want to explore what it truly means to have no friends, not in a superficial way, but through Jung's perspective. We'll look at what it might reveal about your life, your inner world, and even your potential for growth. Main idea 1. Friendship as a mirror of the self. Let's start with something simple but profound. Friendships act like mirrors. When you have friends, you see parts of yourself reflected back through them: your humor, your values, your weaknesses, and even your hidden insecurities. Every relationship gives feedback. But when you don't have friends, that mirror is missing. You're left face to face with yourself, and for many people, that's uncomfortable. Think about it. If you've ever gone a long stretch without social interaction, you might notice you become more aware of your thoughts, your feelings, and your inner struggles. That's because without external distraction, the spotlight turns inward. From a Jungian perspective, this can be either a crisis or an opportunity. A crisis because solitude can amplify loneliness and self-doubt, but an opportunity because it forces you to confront your inner world in ways that friendships often shield you from. Example from everyday life. Imagine two people. The first one has a large group of friends. Their weekends are always full and they rarely spend time alone. This person gets constant feedback from others. You're funny, you're reliable, you're too quiet. Their identity is shaped by interaction. The second person doesn't have friends right now. Maybe they moved to a new city or drifted apart from old connections, or simply never found people who resonate with them. This person spends most weekends alone. Instead of hearing what others think, they hear their own voice. Sometimes it feels heavy, even scary. But here's the question. Which person is closer to self-discovery? Paradoxically, it might be the second one, because having no friends strips away external noise and forces a confrontation with the deeper self. Main idea 2. Loneliness versus solitude. Now, we need to make an important distinction. Loneliness is not the same as solitude. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected. It's when the lack of friends feels like rejection, like something is missing. Solitude is different. It's the choice or acceptance of being alone as a space for growth, reflection, and self-discovery. Jung often suggested that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires solitude. Because only when you are alone can you hear the whispers of the unconscious, the parts of you that are normally drowned out by chatter and busyness. So, if you have no friends right now, it might feel painful, but it might also be the beginning of a deeper journey into who you truly are. Cultural reflection. Society's obsession with friends. Let's step back and look at culture for a second. Modern society glorifies popularity. Social media rewards people with thousands of followers. Movies and TV often portray friendship groups as the ultimate source of happiness. But when someone doesn't have friends, society labels them as lonely, weird, or even broken. But is that fair? Think of great thinkers, artists, and spiritual leaders throughout history. Many of them spent long stretches in solitude. Nietzsche walked alone in the Alps. Emily Dickinson barely left her home, writing poetry in isolation. Monks, mystics, and philosophers often embraced solitude as part of their path. From this perspective, having no friends doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong with you. It could mean you're in a phase of deep transformation, one that doesn't fit society's shallow measures of popularity. Main idea 3. The shadow and friendships. Another key Jungian idea is the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we reject or deny. Friendships often reveal our shadow because friends trigger us. They annoy us, challenge us, and reflect back parts of ourselves we don't like. Without friends, we might miss those opportunities for reflection. But here's the twist. Having no friends might also reveal shadow issues. For example, maybe you struggle to trust people because of past betrayals. Maybe you fear intimacy, so you avoid connections altogether. Maybe you secretly feel unworthy of love and belonging, which blocks friendships. In this way, having no friends isn't just a neutral situation, it could be a message from your unconscious, a sign that there are wounds or fears you need to face before you can build healthy relationships. My personal reflection. I'll be honest here. There have been times in my life when I had almost no friends. At first, it felt like failure, like I was missing out on something everyone else seemed to have. But looking back, those periods were some of the most transformative. I read more, reflected more, and got to know myself in ways I never could have if I was constantly surrounded by people. Eventually, when I did make new friends, those relationships were deeper and more authentic. Because I wasn't just looking for company, I was looking for connection. That's why I don't see having no friends as simply a negative. I see it as a signal that either you're in a growth phase that requires solitude, or that there are inner barriers you need to work through. Either way, it's meaningful. Main idea 4. Personality types and friendships. Carl Jung introduced the idea of psychological types, which later inspired the famous Myers-Briggs type indicator. According to him, people have different orientations: introversion versus extroversion, thinking versus feeling, sensing versus intuition. Why does this matter for friendships? Because your personality type shapes how you approach relationships. Extroverts often thrive in groups. They feel energized by social interaction. If an extrovert suddenly has no friends, it usually feels very painful because their natural energy source is missing. Introverts, on the other hand, might not feel the same urgency. They can spend long stretches alone without discomfort. In fact, too many friendships might overwhelm them. This means that having few or no friends might not always signal a problem. It might simply reflect your natural orientation. Some people genuinely need a wide circle. Others thrive in deep solitude, or with one close bond instead of many. Example from everyday life. Think of two coworkers. Sarah is outgoing, always chatting with colleagues, going out after work, and posting on social media. Her sense of self comes partly from her network. Omar is quieter. He prefers reading at lunch, goes straight home after work, and doesn't mind spending weekends alone. He has no close friends right now, but he doesn't feel empty. He feels balanced. If you judge both by society standards, Sarah looks normal, and Omar looks lonely. But from a Jungian perspective, Omar might be actually closer to his true nature, while Sarah could be hiding from her inner self through constant social noise. So the key isn't whether you have friends, it's whether your current state aligns with your inner personality. Main idea 5. Cultural differences in friendship. Another fascinating angle is culture. Jung believed that the collective unconscious shapes not just individuals, but entire societies. And different cultures have different attitudes toward friendship. In some cultures, like in many Western societies, friendships are voluntary and flexible. People form and drop friendships based on shared interests, lifestyle changes, or personal growth. In other cultures, like in parts of Asia or Africa, community ties are more stable and sometimes less about choice. Friendships are bound to family, neighborhood, or tradition. So if you live in a culture that glorifies individualism, having no friends might feel like a personal failure. But in a culture that values family bonds more than pure friendships, being friendless might not carry the same stigma. This shows that the meaning of having no friends isn't universal. It's deeply shaped by the values around you. Main idea 6. The double-edged sword of modern loneliness. Let's talk about today's world. Technology has changed everything.
On the one hand, we are more connected than ever before. You can chat, post, and share with hundreds of people instantly. But on the other hand, studies show that people feel lonelier than ever before. Why? Because online friends don't always equal real connection. They can actually highlight the absence of true intimacy. You might scroll through hundreds of smiling faces on Instagram, but still feel alone when you turn off your phone. From a Jungian perspective, this is dangerous because fake connections can act like a drug. They distract you from the inner work that real solitude demands, but they don't actually satisfy the soul's need for authentic bonds. So if you have no friends, but you spend all your time online to fill the gap, you might be avoiding the very self-reflection that could transform your loneliness into meaningful solitude. Analytical reflection, individuation, and friendship. Jung's central idea of individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self, requires two things: solitude and connection. Solitude helps you hear your own voice, face your shadow, and integrate the unconscious. Connection tests your growth in the real world, giving you mirrors and challenges. If you only have solitude, you risk isolation and getting stuck in your own head. If you only have connection, you risk losing yourself in the crowd. So having no friends can be a phase that emphasizes solitude, an important stage in your individuation. But eventually, to be whole, you will need to integrate connection as well. Personal reflection. I've noticed in my own life that the periods when I had no friends were also the times when I did the most self-work. I journaled, I questioned my values, I faced insecurities I had avoided for years. But I also realized something. When I emerged from that solitude and began building friendships again, those new connections were deeper, stronger, and more honest. Why? Because I wasn't looking for people to fill a void. I was looking to share who I had become. So I see having no friends not as a permanent state, but as a chapter that teaches you something vital before you move on to the next stage of your story.
Main idea 7, turning loneliness into growth. So, what can you actually do if you have no friends right now? Jung would say, don't rush to fill the void. Instead, explore it. Ask yourself, what is life trying to teach me in this season of solitude? Maybe it's teaching you to be comfortable in your own skin. Maybe it's giving you time to focus on your creativity, your career, or your health. Maybe it's forcing you to face parts of yourself you'd rather avoid, insecurities, fears, or unresolved wounds. This is where shadow work comes in. Often, the reason we struggle with friendships is because of unacknowledged parts of ourselves. If we project our insecurities onto others, we push them away without realizing it. But when we face the shadow, we begin to relate to others in a more authentic way. So instead of saying, I have no friends, something must be wrong with me, you could say, this is my chance to integrate my shadow and grow stronger. Main idea 8, the risks of staying friendless for too long. Of course, there are also dangers in remaining isolated. Jung warned that total withdrawal from society could lead to alienation or even psychological imbalance. Without friends, you might get stuck in your head, spinning in endless self-analysis. You might lose perspective because other people act as mirrors that reflect our blind spots. You might confuse isolation with strength, when in reality, part of being whole is learning to love and be loved. The goal isn't to reject friendship. The goal is to learn from solitude and then use that growth to build healthier, more meaningful bonds. Main idea 9, building authentic connections after solitude. Once you've done the inner work, friendships take on a new meaning. Instead of chasing people to fill a hole in your heart, you attract those who resonate with your authentic self. You don't need 20 friends. You might just need 2 or 3 genuine ones who understand you. Practical steps. Start small.
Join a group that aligns with your interests, like a book club or fitness class. Lead with honesty. Instead of pretending to be more social than you are, be real about your preferences. Value quality over quantity. One deep friendship is worth more than 100 shallow ones. These steps aren't about forcing yourself to be social. They're about creating spaces where genuine connection can grow naturally. Analytical reflection. Friendship as a mirror of the self. Philosophers across history have recognized the role of friendship. Aristotle saw friends as another self. Nietzsche argued that friendship was about pushing each other toward greatness, not just comfort. For Jung, friends are part of individuation. They reflect back the pieces of ourselves we can't see alone. The right friends challenge you, support you, and sometimes even act as guides into parts of your psyche you would never explore otherwise. So the deeper truth is this: having no friends reveals where you are in your psychological journey. It might mean you're in a season of growth, reflection, or shadow work. Or it might signal that it's time to step back into the world and reconnect. Either way, it says something important about your relationship with yourself. Personal reflection. In my own experience, I've learned that being friendless at certain times wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. When I came out of those quiet periods, I was stronger, clearer, and ready to form connections that were rooted in who I truly was. I don't see having no friends as a red flag anymore. I see it as a signpost, a message that says, look inward, do the work, then go outward again when you're ready. Conclusion plus call to action. So, what does having no friends reveal about your life according to Carl Jung? It reveals where you stand between solitude and connection. It shows whether you're listening to your inner voice or hiding from it. It points to the work you still need to do on your journey toward individuation. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever had a period in your life where you had no friends? Did it feel like loneliness, or did it actually help you grow? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this video gave you something to think about, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss future explorations into Jung, psychology, and the deeper mysteries of the human mind. Thank you for watching, and remember, solitude isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just a beginning.